actually sustain our members. The issue of the HRI issues are always there, and for the HRI issues to be there, the business must be in existence. So that's when we started coming up with this strategy where we were saying, it's like, we need to shift our focus, we must be business minded, and then I think we've done that, and then we came up with our strategy document where we are saying something.
No, we'll talk about the strategic document. I just want to really get some background. So you started off as an HR association to start with, and then you morphed into more an advocacy group, a group that looks after members that generates business.
Yes,
Varaidzo, now you're on the business committee. Maybe you could just give us a background. What does that imply? Because obviously this change of focus that you've had since 2014, 2016.
Yes,
yeah, you had a change of focus. So what is the mandate of the business committee? What is your reason for existence?
Well, I think basically our reason for existence is to ensure that our members grow. I think over the last decade or two, it's no secret that the economy has been struggling a lot, and our sector hasn't been spared. So we are here to then form linkages with other sectors, grow the industry, grow the business, lobby the government as well for policies for business to increase capacity, to increase revenue, increase jobs, and I think that's exactly what we're trying to do.
That's right, yeah. I mean, the manufacturing sector, it's just so important, Patrick, in terms of the growth of any economy. And obviously we've witnessed the decline over the last decade or so, if not more, of the manufacturing sector, whether it be capacity utilization and so forth. I mean, do you feel that the time is ripe now for the manufacturing sector to take its role where it should be as one of the prime drivers of the economy?
Yes, thank you very much, Andy. Indeed, the manufacturing sector, I think, took a decline from about 2000, 2008. And now it's the right time. If you look at the agricultural production, for instance, if you look at the mechanization, which feeds into the transportation of these goods, our association and the various companies that do these jobs, it's the appropriate time. Yes, we know we may have constraints in terms of old machinery, we may have constraints in terms of importation of raw materials, but the beginning is there. I mean, there is light at the end of the tunnel if we get the support from the farming sector itself, the manufacturers themselves, people that process, for people that are really retooling, people that are re-equipping. It's not everything that is imported which we cannot make. We can make some of those things.
No, I'm going to, definitely. I mean, this is a fact. And, on this program, many times we've said that we're now a nation of importers. We import, in fact, way too much, and we don't look really at local production. And I'm going to talk about that when we talk about some of the advocacy and policy initiatives that you have. But listeners, please feel free. As I said, today we're opening up the lines. You can ask us questions about this, about issues such as Zisco Steel, about issues in iron and steel, about bus chassis making, about mechanical engineering and so forth, which is what the association that's here represents. But also feel free to ask us questions about your general economic issues. We are also going to talk to my guests about prices, and I think prices is a huge fact. And when you have the Manufacturers Association in front of you, you want to also see whether they are to blame for the price increases. So we're going to get some answers about that too. So feel free, please, to WhatsApp us on 073-116-8045 or our various social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. And you can also watch us live streaming on Facebook, on our ZFM Facebook page. We should be live streaming, so please catch us there as well. Now, some of the roles that you play in terms of what you do for your members, and one of the first things, in fact, it's the first thing that you do, is what you call advocacy lobbying. EISAZ regularly interacts with relevant government ministries, bodies to lobby for policies that benefit its members. And it's these policies I'd like to talk about because, as an association, you obviously need to approach government with policies that you want to put in place or you want to see them put in place that will benefit your members. And I have a couple of policies here that I think I'd like to talk about. Now, the first issue, of course, is local content policy. Now, maybe, you could talk us through that. Patrick, could you be please talk us through. You say you're looking at a local content policy. Can you explain what that means? Because it's a big deal at the moment, is it not? This conception that imports cost less than locally made products, for example. So this local content policy, you think that hopefully should maybe balance the wheel a bit to help local manufacturers? Maybe explain that.
Yes, thanks, Andy. What that means, Andy, is if you are importing a piece of equipment, right, where part of it can be manufactured locally, what we are then saying, let's regulate in such a manner that you import the major component and the other part that can be made locally is manufactured here. Let me give you a very good example of a truck drop side body. Import the truck chassis and the cab, and then the body is manufactured locally. So we move slowly to manufacture of other components up to the cab. That's the ambition that we want. That's the goal.
So you start slowly. I mean,
So
at least some of the product must be locally made.
manufactured. Yes, exactly. So you know that, given the same example I've just given of a truck, there are various bodies. There's a drop side, there's a van body, there's an insulated body, and all these things. We already have that capacity. We already have the equipment, though old, which makes these bodies, right? And all we then do is to import the raw material, the sheets that we need to cut and bend. We've got the cutting and bending machines. We've got the manpower that can fabricate to make that, these various type of bodies. So I just give one example. If you now look at, say, irrigation equipment, for instance, right? We've got guys that can fabricate the main pipe, right? Be it a center pivot. We import maybe the gearbox, the electric panel, and all the other reinforcement can be made locally by our members. A collaboration can be made.
So wait, are you advocating for an actual law that says this? Is this what you're saying? Because that's a bit harsh, is it not? I mean, would you find that you're stifling the free market? If
No,
that,
not a law, Andy. All we are simply saying, let us not ignore local players, because as you are aware, all these components, they're all being imported 100%. If you look the last 3 years, the number of center pivots that were imported. If you look at the last 3 years, the number of combines that were imported. Tractors, air dryers, but these things can be made locally, you know.
Okay.
We've got members in Chinoi, we make air dryers here in Harare, throughout the whole country. I mean, if you look what we've been, reading in the media, the wheat production of this year, it's very impressive, right? If you look at the last season, the maize production was very impressive, but the moisture content continued to be a problem.
Right.
Yeah, but we've got companies that can make these components here. So this is why we're here.
Right. But Varaidzo, I mean, let me put it to you that is it about the quality of the products that we're making locally? Is it about that? I mean, why are companies are willing to import from places like China and so forth for their products rather than look at local manufacturers? And what is the basic reason behind that? Is it lack of confidence in the product itself?
I think due to the fall of the economy, I think people just got really comfortable importing items from all over the world. But I think gradually as the years have gone by, we do have local manufacturers that have put in research and time and money into improving their quality. And we're not saying we are 100% there, we can do everything. But what we're saying is, let's work together. I mean, let's work together. Tell me what you want, the quality that you want, and we work through it so that we can build the economy.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you're going to bring in things like imported products, okay, you're going to bring in a full imported product. You obviously need spares and so forth.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's obviously where our local manufacturing base comes in. Austin, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, we've actually been seeing these imported products coming into our workshops now for repairs and refurbishment. And we actually find out it's like those products were made for those climate conditions in those countries. When they come into Zimbabwe, they actually fail to deliver the goods. So we've been saying is most of these players have actually said that it's actually better to use the local products. It might be a little bit expensive because we are importing the raw materials, and we are not manufacturing our own raw materials here. That's where our major cost is coming from. But it's durable. And all these are good examples are the plows and some of these pumps coming in here. They are now coming into our workshop. We don't have the space, and then the downtime for they're actually getting from these imported products. They are now coming back to us as the gentlemen. Let's sit down. I think we will actually come up because as Zimbabwe, we've got the basic infrastructure to start manufacturing if you compare us within other economies in our region. So we have somewhere to start from. Yes, the equipment is more than 20 years old, but we have somewhere to start from.
Yeah. Okay, no, I've got that. In fact, before I continue, let me just say that Bekizela Mangena, who is the new president of EISAZ from July 2018, unfortunately he couldn't make it, he's in Bulawayo, but I know that he sends you his regards, I know that. So if he was, he could have. So Bekizela, thank you for that. Now, Austin, you talk about this, but how do you get manufacturers or people that need to import these products, these center pivots or whatever you call it in agriculture, for example, how do you get them to actually start buying local? I mean, it's all well and good us believing that it's okay and we want to encourage these people to buy local, but how do you actually do it? And what is your association trying to do to get people to start buying local?
Thank you, Andy. So what you have done is, like, if you look at every economy, the biggest spender is the government. So we've been targeting government departments, especially using those imported products. And what we have done is, in our association, we have said, well, we did carry an audit of our members. When we now know what our members can produce, the capacity of our members and their capabilities. So we've gone to these government departments and saying, look, we are Zimbabweans. We've been here, we've been operating in Zimbabwe through these tough times, and this is what we have. We actually took a tour with some of these government departments through our sector, showing them what we can do. And then we are saying, we as an association, we pull up our resources together. We look at the good example is that of a center pivot. We're saying that's a steel structure. We can actually make that thing, yes. We import the steel. Of course, we're going to import the steel, but fabrication, some of these little things, they can be made locally. Right. And then we actually reduce the import bill, and then by doing that, we are creating employment for ourselves.
Oh, but I mean, under the existing command agricultural structures, I know they've got command infrastructure and so on. Are you saying that government doesn't have in place a policy that they should hopefully buy a portion of that under that command infrastructure, if I can call it that? There's no policy to say they should buy from local manufacturers.
I would say that was their drive also is like to buy locally. We actually approached by the people from Command Agriculture saying, we've been importing these things. Are you telling us that you can't even make these things? That's when it started with this whole process. But no, it's like, it takes time to kickstart, but we are almost getting there in terms of availing our products to these Command Agriculture.
It makes sense, because if we're going to be spending our money, on ourselves, then rather we'd also spend our money on our manufacturers to produce those products, rather than spend the money on foreigners who import it. And as you said, quite rightly, it could be, there's very instances of planes, of cars and so forth that come into Africa and they can't handle the heat, or they're not made for the situation. So it just makes a lot of sense. Now, moving on, because there's another area which I thought that it was already in existence. It was about the mining sector, whereby mines should procure around 40% of their needs from local companies. And I'm not sure if it was a policy per se. Patrick, do you have any comments on that? Because I thought that was something that was being driven quite strongly.
Yes, there was a pronouncement to that effect, and we are engaged seriously with the Chamber of Mines. But again, it's the same old song where the mines themselves will say, look, the local players don't have capacity, but we need them to be given an opportunity to demonstrate our capability for them to be able to charge, that we don't have capacity. We do have capacity, because most of the things that they are importing, they are paying money up front, right? And then they wait for a couple of months before it's delivered. Mm-hmm. And what we are simply saying, the environment that we are all operating, we know it's very harsh. There is no, working capital. Most of these companies are struggling. If they would pay us just 50%, and then we work and develop together with them the products that they want, the aftermarket support is readily available for them. Right? And we are creating employment for our own people, and business for them. So the environment which we're working in really becomes good. But the mining sector is an area which has got a lot of potential, which our sector could benefit greatly. I'll give you an example. One of the consumable that they use, ball mills. We've got a lot of foundries, some of them which are now just mothballed, some of them moribund now. Yes, they talk in terms of quality of
yes,
these balls.
I was going to ask you that, because this quality is an issue, is it not?
It is an issue, but and remember, if it's a function of where we know what the customer wants. Together with the customer, we develop the standard that they want. And we are engaged with institutions of higher ed of continuous research and development to get to the standard that is expected by our clients. So remember, we are a growing economy, so we are a growing industry as well.
Right.
Technologically, in processes, right? What we are also doing from our end is to improve our internal processes, to improve our responsiveness, right? So that we become efficient, the unit cost comes down.
Okay, all right. I mean, Varaidzo, you know, I know that Patrick has talked about this, but quality, I mean, this is what I always hear. I hear that, sure, we may be able to make the product here, but the quality is not so good, particularly for serious players like the mining houses, for example, where they can't be wrong on their equipment. They've got to get the right equipment, it's got to do the right job, and they've got to have the after-sales service as well. So, I mean, is that not an issue, though? I mean, you know, I understand what Patrick's saying, that R&D, and this takes time. And by the way, listeners, China did this as well, didn't they? They also had seriously bad quality products, but because they had a very strong local industry was protected, they could actually refine their quality to become world standard. What are we doing here? I mean, what is this about R&D? Is this about what? I mean, what makes our quality products able to compete with imports and then be able to be exported and compete with them in export markets?
I think one of the things that we as a nation need to do is we need to realize that, you know, all parties need to come to the table. It's going to take initiative from the miners themselves and the manufacturers to come together and work on a quality that really works for the mines. So if I'm sitting, in my office and I'm engaging the miners, I cannot know exactly what they really want unless they come in and they involve themselves in the process and they work.
And you're saying that is not happening?
Well, some of it is there, but to the extent to build the economy, it's not yet there at that level.
Right.
But we need to get to that level so that the industry can grow.
Right, okay. No, I'm with that. It's almost as if business we must start looking at helping each other. I think
Exactly.
business, manufacturing, or whatever the value chain is or the supply chain is. And unless we physically or mentally make that adjustment and we decide that we are going to do that, it just isn't going to happen, Austin. This is correct, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's something that I throw out there now, is that those of you out there in business, why don't we first look at local manufacturing? We look at, sure, we talked about the quality being poor, and I think no one is disputing that on some products. I think some are world class, to be frank. I think certain things cannot compete, but others, yes, particularly more technical stuff. But I think that's important. Now, let's move on to another policy that at least you're looking at advocating as EISAZ. And of course, that's the Engineering, Iron and Steel Association of Zimbabwe. That's a regulation regarding importation of products and equipment that can be procured locally. Okay, so in other words, are you advocating that there should be, in whatever anyone buys in this country, there should be some form of local content or local manufacturing content in it? Austin?
Yeah, basically what we are saying is like we should put a more drive on local production. And we are not totally banning the imports of these things, but we're saying in those areas where we can manufacture, please look on the local market. And we are there to up our game so that we can also meet those international standards with the help of the customer, of course.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, good. Now let's move on, because listeners, please feel free. Get hold of us on our WhatsApp number, 073-116-8045. We have lots of questions here. In fact, some questions are starting to come in. So let's take a question, actually, because it looks quite interesting. And this is about one of the problems in Zimbabwe is that of corruption. How is this board geared to fighting corruption? Then there's the issue of serious disconnect between industry and the schools in the country. How are you guys encouraging junior artisans? That's from Magagula in Gweru. So that's interesting. It has different components, this question. So obviously we're talking about corruption. Now I know corruption is everywhere, and this is more of an economic question, I think, to you, rather than sort of to say, hey, what's the corruption in your organization? Because you're an association, you represent employers, so you don't really have insight in that. But obviously corruption, Patrick, is a huge issue. And I mean, it does impact manufacturing, because obviously it's those sweetheart deals that they can get from importing from different countries. That corruption, if I can put it in the procurement process, that has an impact on what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, look, Andy, it's we don't want to say everybody who imports is corrupt.
No, of course.
It could be a situation of probably not knowing, but now that we are doing as we are doing now, we hope that the local people in the procurement process will give consideration to local manufacturers and will abide by the procurement standards. If it's a government department, there are procurement requirements that they should follow those processes. If it's stipulated that if you are buying whatever component, you must buy from local suppliers, comply with that.
Right, I'm with you.
That's basically what it is. And don't let any other, just be guided by what the law says and cover it. Where we cannot meet the demand or the standards, yes, we take note of that, and then we start, we work together in terms of the importation of whatever component it might be, or equipment or machinery. So it might not really be based on corruption, but of course you get a few elements that are swayed in terms of going a certain way, ignoring what the rules say. I'm sure, we all know the anti-corruption drive that the government pursued on.
Right.
And I'm sure those few bad apples will be really rooted out.
Right, now, a second part of this, Varaidzo and to you, Austin, is really about the disconnect between, the question is, there's an issue of serious disconnect between industry and the schools. And this has come up a lot in the sense that, we had Africa Capacity Building Foundation here the other week, and they talked about the need for 1.6 million engineers in Africa. That was the deficit of engineers, okay? So obviously, we must have lost a lot of talent. While our economy was going through the doldrums in the last 10, 15 years, we must have lost a lot of talent to South Africa and to other countries. So what is your association doing in terms of, one, putting in place relevant educational courses, or working with various polytechnics and so forth to see how we can generate the right talent or the right students coming through, particularly in your area of engineering and the various skills that you have?
Okay, thank you, Andy. What we have done, it's true that we have lost quite a number of skilled people to our neighboring countries or worldwide, but what we have done, we haven't stopped. Like I would like to thank our institutions here in Zimbabwe. They've continued to train and churn out these engineers and technicians as well. Now, what we've done now as an association is like one of our pillars in our strategies is about human capital and training.
Mm-hmm.
So we have actually linked up with some universities and tertiary institutions where we're saying it's like we want to keep our relevance in these institutions.
Yeah, well, let's not be shy. I mean, the institutions are Harare Polytechnic College, Kwekwe Polytechnic,
yes,
and NAS.
NAS, yes, yeah. So we are still on a drive. Our drive is like to have all these major cities and towns. Our relevance will be there. What we are trying to do is to link these students, even up to high school, with our association. Then they must be having an insight of what we do as an association, so that we keep on generating these new players coming in as technicians and engineers.
Yeah, but I mean, looking at what you've signed, for example, at Harare Polytechnic, it's quite comprehensive. I mean, you talk about projects, work for students. I'm sure that means internship.
Yes.
They can be attached to some of the companies.
Yes, that's right.
You talk about, for example, sharing of facilities. You agree to share your respective important R&D facilities.
Yes,
Okay, tell me, how does that work? I mean, they're doing R&D, their engineering section or whatever, and you're jumping in. Maybe you could explain that to Varaidzo.
Yes. You'll find that as we go about our day-to-day operations, maybe a company has an issue with a product that they're trying to work out, a customer's brought it back or something. We then contact some of the institutions and their students, and we actually come and sit down together and come up with a plan of how to perfect a product, and we work through it, so it becomes their project, and it also becomes something that the company can also take over.
All right, that's excellent. Has that been happening?
Yes,
You have actually had products where this has happened,
Yes,
and it's been successful.
Yes.
Oh well, I mean, I think that's fantastic, to be honest with you, because if we can't use our young minds to
Yes.
help us, so what are we going to do with
There's
them?
some really brilliant minds out there.
Oh, there's some brilliant minds. Oh no, I don't. I think I completely agree with you. Now, and how does that translate to now getting more people? You know, because I was looking at something the other day where we looked at how many lawyers, doctors, nurses, and so forth we had. But when I started looking at electrical skills, this kind of stuff, the numbers went way down.
Yes.
How are you translating your initiatives into getting more people or more young kids to start looking at these different avenues of work?
Okay, what we have been doing is we've been trying to encourage the lecturers to sort of sway their students to come in, and you know, we come in and as the students come in, you start to see the talent that they have, and you put them in the areas where they're best suited. So the numbers have started to come up, and I think there are actually some departments that are reopening programs that had been closed due to the low uptake.
But no, I can see that. But Patrick, I put this to you though, that you know, in today's world, robotics, mechanization has taken over. You know, you no longer go to a huge manufacturing plant, and you find that it's actually more and more mechanical now than it is human bodies. So therefore, you find that the skills required to be these things now isn't necessarily sort of on the shop floor in your overalls, is it? It's also about learning highly technical skills to run the machinery.
Yes, and it actually goes beyond that. There's this artificial intelligence coming in, but I'm not going to talk about that. Let's talk about where we are. We are really probably right at the, it's not elementary. Some of the companies are mechanized to some extent, but those skills are necessary for the equipment that we have operating in our companies, all sectors. But as we migrate to automation, to robotics, to artificial intelligence, we need to sustain ourselves. So you will find these craftsmen are really necessary going as we transit.
You can't. You can have all this stuff, but you still need people. This is the bottom line, and we need to train those people in the skills to be able to do it.
And remember, there's something we spoke about, the local content. Our vision as an association in this industry is then to grow our manufacturing base to the extent where we then export various products, be them components, be them finished product, to other African countries. Remember, we've got trade agreements.
Well, hang on, hold that thought. Unfortunately, we're going to have to take a break now, but I'll be getting back, so please keep that thought in your mind, and we're going to take some more questions. Okay. So please join me after the break. I'm joined by the Engineering, Iron and Steel Association of Zimbabwe. You may not know who they are, but tonight, after this show, I hope that you will, and you'll understand the importance that they play in the manufacturing sector. So please join us after the break. Tonight I'm joined by representatives from the Engineering, Iron and Steel Association of Zimbabwe, Austin Tigere, Patrick Munyaradzi, and Varaidzo Kudenga. Now, please feel free, as I said earlier, to get hold of us on our WhatsApp 073-116-8045, our various social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. And of course, we're streaming live at the moment on Facebook, ZFM Facebook page. Now, I had interrupted Patrick, and maybe you could just quickly finish your thought, because we were talking about this whole concept of bringing people on, the youngsters coming in to learn and getting the skills, and not, not believing that mechanization, if I can call it that, robotics, AI is the end all. We need trained people as well. Maybe you could finish what you were saying.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Remember, what I was saying is that we are transiting to modern technology. And but during this transition, we do need those craftsman skills.
Yes.
Right? And we are very much alive to the technological changes that are taking place. Some of the technology that probably we used yesteryear may not be that relevant going forward. And the new technology coming in, which we need to position Zimbabwe to be at an advantage point for exports. I tell you, for instance, currently everybody's talking about this. Zimbabwe probably is the fourth or fifth, has got the fourth largest deposits of lithium. We're going to manufacture lithium batteries. We're talking about solar panels. We manufacture all this sort of thing for export. But the skill that we require is something that requires training through those institutions we're talking about.
Got you. Okay, thank you for that. It's important. And before I take a question here, I just wanted to talk to just throw this to Varaidzo. What about gender? We are such an advocate on this show about women in work and women doing things and women being as good as men and doing whatever they are. And I always get this feeling that we talk gender equality or gender growth. But then when I look at the board of directors of some of these companies, I'm addressing you as a woman now, okay? They're mostly men and so forth. Is there a drive in your organization to at least look at seeing how you can get women involved in this, how you can get women internships in the various companies and so forth? What is your association's stand on that?
Oh, thanks, Andy. Well, first of all, I do agree with you. I mean, I also have the same view. When you look around, it's all men, it's a men's world,
Yeah.
But women are really coming up. I think as an association, particularly myself personally as well, we do try to get women involved. I think sort of in the engineering sector, you find that a lot of women and young girls have sort of shied away from, because it seems like it's just hard manual labor, and it's just for guys, and it cannot be done by women. But I have seen a lot of women who can even do better than the men.
Well, I'm into that.
Yes, yes. So in terms of the universities, we have been talking to the young ladies that are out there. We try to make them see that it's all in the mind. Right. It's all in the mind.
And also, I mean, the fact is this: is that sure, some of it may be hard labor on the coal face, if I can call it that, doing that. But there are other jobs in manufacturing that aren't that. Are there? There's the computer side of it. There's all sorts of other roles which aren't just sort of bashing and building a chassis and working with steel and so forth. Is that no? That's not right.
Yeah, it's like we actually find, it's like most of the ladies or women normally take these accounts, HR issues, but it's like of late we've actually seen ladies coming in like electrical engineers, fit antennas, actually operate machines just like men. And from my company, I think we've got 2 ladies who are actually operating these machines. They're doing very well.
Right.
Both they'll actually be trying to prove their point, by the end of the day, they'll be doing very well.
And I don't know if I can say this without getting all sorts of WhatsApp messages, but and sorry, women work harder. I'm sorry. Anyway, let me leave it there before I get into trouble. Right, let's take a question, shall we? Hi, Andy. Remember when the government said local content 75% on music and TV? People cried and complained about it. Look, now we have dancehall, the tukus and jazz of this world, and deny. We are a radio station, so thank you. So if we want our local industry to grow, we need to go that way. Look at Rwanda, India, and Zambia. Zim used to produce the best shirts like Pino Gardini and Nissan from Willowvale. We just need to put our house in order. The environment is there. We need action. It's an open market. That's Mr. B from Manresa. Mr. B, thank you very much for that. So I think that the question there, of course, is that, surely we did make these things. I remember, I remember going into shops and buying these lovely clothes and so forth, or getting onto a Zubco bus, and they were also all made locally, if I'm not mistaken, and so on, yeah? Now, of course, everything I see is imported, it's second-hand, it's brought in from different countries. I mean, we need to get our house in order, I think, is the point. What would you say to that, Patrick?
Yeah, true indeed, Andy. As I said, look, it's unfortunate we're in this situation. What has happened then, you find our skills base is also dwindled. But however, as an association, we are establishing a skills database of various disciplines, right? So that as we are working together with institutions of higher learning on a training program for new technology and probably some old technology, we have people that can work currently to produce the good quality that we want, a product that is durable, is technically correct and acceptable, right, for our own local market. But our market must understand that we are at a developmental stage. You cannot compare a product from a developed market with what we have. I mean, the good example, which the listener gave.
But hang on, you're saying that we cannot compare a product from a developed market to our own product.
No, we can.
Okay.
The comparative then, but then you get a variance.
Okay,
Right?
all right.
Right?
And is this not the variance that we're now talking about?
That
to
is
see
what
if
we are
can
addressing
bridge?
now. This is
Right.
what we are addressing as an
Okay.
association, together with the users of products, together with our clients, right? So while we are building up the skills, remember skill is something which is very vital.
Yeah.
When you were talking just now addressing the gender issues, you spoke. It's not always manual.
No, it's
That's
not.
the impression that people get.
Yeah.
The people now.
Fitters and turners and engineers and
all
mechanics.
those things. That's old technology.
Right.
Now there is new technology, where the women can come and actually do it and operate these things. But I think a good example of the 75 local content, look what it has done, is the same spirit that we want to take and apply to the engineering.
But I think the point the listener is making is that it hasn't actually been, Austin, it hasn't actually been implemented, this 75%. It appears as if it's a number that people throw around, but of course you can't force companies to do it.
Yeah.
But it's not true, is it?
Yeah, it's you're right. It's like it hasn't been actually been implemented, and we've been all been saying that how are we missing each other in one room? We know that.
I like that. I'm going to remember that.
Yes, Zimbabwe has got the best. It's a human capital base here in the region, and then I think the world, that by now knows that it's like Zimbabwe is the hard workers. We've got the mineral resources, and then we've got the basic infrastructure, and then what we know what we will go on to do now. We export our labor. We export our forex because we are buying in forex. But
Yeah.
we're saying it's like,
No, you export your labor, and then the product that they make, we're importing.
yes, and they export that by importing them, we're exporting our forex as well.
But that means that the environment must be conducive for those skills to come back.
Yes.
Okay, the pay grades must be okay, the product must be there, the export markets, the business must be here.
Yes.
And I think that it is. I think it's starting to be here. We can't say today it is yet. I think we're sort of at what's the word? We're at the on your mark stage, if I can call it that, when you're on the race.
Yeah, I think on that one, I think if you look at, I was listening to the vice president recently was talking about, it's like he was actually, that drive, that's what we would also want to know. It's like, if it's coming from the top, I'm sure all the other people,
Leadership is crucial.
Yeah,
100% right.
And
You're right. I like what you said. We're missing each other in a room,
Yeah.
because the fact is this: unless business makes it a conscious effort to say we are going to buy local content, unless they do that and then sit with the local people, the local manufacturers, and come up with a product specifically made for them, tailor-made to R&D and so forth, and it may take some time. It may be laborious, but I tell you what, in the long run, it's going to have to be good for us as a country. It has to be. All right, let's take a question here. Good evening. Thank you, and good evening to you. I think our industry engineers have to work hand in glove with institutions of higher learning to create equipment that is suitable for local environment, that is also price competitive. I believe we have most, if not all, the primary resources required to create products. We cannot continue to follow behind other countries. It's all about creation, not copying. The current combine might not actually be the best combination. Thank you for that. It's true. I mean, you have to work hand in glove. Is this not correct,
Yeah.
Varaidzo?
Yeah.
It's true.
I
That's
think
true.
on that one, I think we actually working with Quicker Poly. What they actually told us that it's like these institutions actually come up with their prototype products, and then as an industry, we are supposed to commercialize them. So they are coming up with these new products, innovations from these students, and we are saying that's the kind of partnership we want to have with these institutions. They do the R&D, and then we commercialize that product. By the end of the day, there is a win-win situation for the student, the university or college, and the company as well.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, let's take another question here. Is there dialogue with government concerning production costs? Because all I hear from organizations like you is cry for bans. Okay, cry for bans, I don't know what that means, but anyway, thank you. And you spoke of products being imported at full costs. Most outside are offering credit lines, because this whole 50% you gave as an example still won't work when purchasing capital equipment. Okay, now that's an interesting question. I think basically you're saying, is there dialogue with government concerning production costs? I think the cost of production, per se. Okay, I mean, this boils down to, I suppose, one of the issues that I am going to talk about if we have time, and well, we have time, is about prices, of course. But is there dialogue?
Yes, it's one of our, area of our concern is the labor issue. We had actually been comparing the labor in Zimbabwe with the one in the regions. It was the most expensive in terms of the labor costs here in Zimbabwe. There has been some dialogue, and then I'm glad to say that in our sector we've actually tried to have the labor costs at minimum.
Okay, wait, I always hear this. I always hear companies saying that labor costs are too high before they look at other efficiencies that they could negate or cut down, isn't it, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not always labor. In fact,
yes,
yeah, and I think that, if a company makes money, they should also recompense their workers accordingly. I believe this is one of the areas. And you represent the employer. So for once, let me sit on the side of the workers, yeah? You need the workers to do the jobs.
Yes.
So you need them to be happy, to have good job satisfaction, and so forth. I mean, so I think that looking at labor as is only one element of the puzzle. Is that not correct? It's just a little element of it. It's maybe a large part of it, but it isn't the whole picture.
Yeah, it's not the whole picture. Yeah. So what we are saying is, like, if the company is doing very well, we just, as a sector, we just set minimums. They can always pay as they can afford. So we've been looking at the labor costs,
Okay.
and then the equipment, retooling, and all those kind of things. Like that actually makes our product more expensive as well.
Okay, all right. No, thank you for that. Okay, great. This business of 50% capital money in terms of having facilities that you can draw down on, and I think it's important. I mean, at a recent workshop you organized, I think in April in Bulawayo, Kupikile Mlambo, he's the deputy governor of the Reserve Bank. He said that local companies needed to be capacitated in anticipation of an influx in foreign companies that want to set up shop in Zimbabwe. And today I just saw in the paper, in fact, funnily enough, in the Business Times, that there's a very large Munich-based manufacturing company that's coming here to set up shop. And that is a danger, is it not? You get a world-class, renowned organization like them who may possibly come and set up a manufacturing shop in Harare or in Zimbabwe with all the latest equipment and so forth, yeah? That can blow some of your local manufacturers out of the water, can it not, Patrick?
Yes, indeed, it will, Andy. Look, but we welcome any, new technology and competition from it. But the 50% that you were talking about, lines of credit, remember this business, probably it must take three parties. The financial sector also has to come into play. By resuscitating the manufacturing sector, we are also enhancing business activity in the financial sector, right? So if they facilitate these lines of credit for our clients, and then we get paid by the financial institutions, that cycle, if it's complete, then you get the wheel turning. Now, at this stage, I think the listener mentioned about this is now foreign lines of credit, right? Is it from a local bank or it's a foreign facility which is outside?
Right. And he did, yeah. I mean, look, I agree with what you're saying, but I think it's also important that anybody who comes in to invest in the manufacturing sector, I think they join a family. They don't come in, and they don't come as a single entity. They join a family, which means that they also share their R&D. They also sit with other manufacturers. They also see how they can make their supply chain local rather than foreign. I mean, these are some of the areas that your association has got to be pushing, I would assume.
Yeah, I think the advocacy group will be really advocating for that. That look, let's regulate that so that when these guys are coming in, we welcome new technology, but work with the local, right? That's the only way we can capacity. Remember, these guys are coming from an environment where they've got a lot of money. Coming into us, we may have the skills, we may have the premises, we may have all this, but sometimes we lack even just the basic working capital to do a job.
In fact, that's very good, because according to the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries 2017 Manufacturing Sector Survey Report, companies with older machinery and equipment did not record any growth in the period under review. That was for 2017. An indication that industry without machinery is dead. Output growth was only recorded by companies whose machinery was less than 10 years old. Now, it is my understanding that some of the major companies in this country, their equipment is between 20 and 30 years old. I believe it's something like, if I have the numbers here, it's something like 38%, if I'm not mistaken. 26% is 10 years old. and so on. I mean, but the fact is this, is that our machinery, our equipment is old and it needs to be retooled. And that's a huge investment. It's a huge amount of money that's required. What does your association believe should be the solution to that, Austin?
Well, I think we all agree that most of our equipment is now obsolete, and we need to move with technology. That's why we've been saying it's like that facility of coming of which was proposed by the RBZ of capacitating our company in terms of retooling must come in Forex, not in RTA fund, because we also want to import that technology as well. But what we are saying is like, at times we would rather use our old equipment to generate,
Yeah, but this equipment is not going to be good enough to compete in terms of quality and in terms of capacity, which we were talking about earlier. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yes,
let's not beat around the bush here. Yeah, you can have old equipment and you may be able to produce something, but you won't be able to produce the quantities required and the quality required with that equipment, because things have moved in 20 to 30 years. I mean, in your business, I'm sure they move every 5 years. I don't even know, but
yeah, of course, yes.
yeah. So I mean, that's an issue. I mean, how do you retool a manufacturing base which is so dilapidated and ancient?
Yeah.
It's a good question, is it not? Yeah.
Yes,
Varaidzo.
I think it's actually very possible, because you find that we have everything to allow for that here. We have the market, we have the financial institutions, and we have the manufacturing company. All we need is that link. I mean, the financial institution comes in with in terms of the capital, and they plug it in. But what we then need is also, when we get that equipment and it comes in, we need to have that link with the end user.
Right.
So that is definitely possible locally.
Okay.
And
all right.
before you leave that, it's
No,
the market
please.
the local market offtake is very, very crucial in this regard. Because if you're getting a facility to re-equip and retool, and suddenly you produce and there's no offtake, you have a problem. This is the reason why we are advocating for regulation of local procurement.
Right.
Let's buy from local procurement. We create that capacity. We create that market offtake. By mechanizing and retooling, we are now enhancing, creating a competitive advantage.
Right.
And comparative advantage, because if you look from a quality perspective, price perspective, we now become competitive. But if we don't somehow regulate these things, we may never get there. It will take time.
Well, let's take a comment, because I have another question, which I think is something that we need to mull over as the four of us in the studio. Good evening, Andy. Good evening. I'm concerned about the attitude that we have as a people. There are many brilliant engineering ideas that can catapult Zimbabwe to another level, but instead of having those ideas brought to life, greed takes over, and eventually these grand ideas die a natural death. So, how can local companies be motivated and inspired to be the change, the mindset of people? That's Martin from Bulawayo. Martin, thank you. So, how can local companies be motivated and inspired to change the mindset of people? This attitude of that, we have these ideas, but they just go away and we can't bring them to fruition. I mean, if somebody came to you with a great idea, great engineering idea to one of your companies, I've seen this happen. A young kid walks in your shop. I'm sure you all work for your own companies. You're just part of the association. How willing are you to listen to these ideas and to take them the next step? Because this is innovation, is it not? And you can't just leave it to universities and so forth. Innovation can start at home.
Yeah, Andy, it's a very good observation. The biggest handicap is really financial, because the young engineer or the innovator comes in with this brilliant idea. You've got to take it through the research and development processes. Now, currently our organizations, the capacity is limited of doing research and development, if at all it's there. Hence the reason why we chose to collaborate with institutions of higher learning, right? To say, look, these ideas come, let's do the research and development together with them at the schools. We're talking about, equipment being old and all this stuff. Our overheads are high. We're trying to reduce them to respectable levels.
Don't they follow each other? I mean, the fact is that inefficient or old equipment leads to inefficiencies in production, which leads to additional costs, additional breakdowns, and more spare parts. I mean, it's a vicious circle. It has to be ended, right?
Yes.
How do you end it?
Well, we've got to be recapitalized.
Right. So we need facilities.
Yes.
We need financial facilities.
Correct.
To be put in place that are specifically geared at retooling.
That's correct.
But retooling under a plan.
Yes.
Of course.
And
A
that
broad
takes me-
plan.
A broad plan, which takes me to your strategic plan 2016-2020. Is that in your plan? Because I must be honest, I've been trying to get a copy of it and I haven't been able to. So I'm for once at a loss of what to say, because tell me about the strategic plan 2016-2020. Austin and...
All right, it's like what we actually did now is like we looked at our sector. Of course, with the challenge of the capital equipment, where we say it's like most of it, of course, it's more than 20 years old. So we need to retool our industry. So what we've done is that there is a business support and network committee which actually looking into those areas. If you look at, for instance, in foundry, what equipment are we looking at? We'll come up with the right equipment which is needed in that sector, so that we actually advocate for that kind of equipment to come in for that sector. We go into the general engineering. We've got the CNCs which are now produce these high quality products for the market. Where can we source them? Who is supposed to be using them? That's what we've been trying to do in terms of on the issue of retooling, and also in terms of human capital. Yes, we have bought new equipment, but we also need people trained to use these machines. That's why we say it's like yes, the universities. I think we've been approached by one of these. That's Harare Polytechnic. They want to review their curriculum so that it actually provide what we need as an industry. Yes, they have been training people to use this old equipment, but now some have actually used their own capital to buy this new equipment. So they not need to train people locally, not to send them outside to be trained to come and use this equipment.
Right. I mean, we need innovators here,
yes,
but more than that, we need to listen to them.
Yes.
I think that's where the frustration comes in. I think overseas or outside of Zimbabwe, you can come up with a great idea, and if you find the right backer, you can take it to market.
Yes.
Here it appears as if you come up with the right idea, you may get frustrated and actually have to take it somewhere else outside of Zimbabwe. I mean, I find that is quite a common thread that runs through. And I mean, you're right. It is a mindset change, as our great listener said in his comment. It's a mindset change and attitude that, hey, we can produce great ideas. We can produce innovative ideas in this country for manufacturing. So why don't we take advantage of that?
Andy, he's very correct, the listener. But I must say, the sector which really can stimulate this growth, right, which can act as a catalyst, is the transport sector, for instance. If you look at the activity going on in the railways, right, for instance, there's a lot of refurbishment work. I'm almost certain that all that work can be done local, or our sector can do it. If you look at the buses, for instance, we can do buses.
Yeah, we can make the chassis, we can do all of that.
All those things we've done.
Why do we need to buy 50 buses from China or from wherever?
Precisely. When we've got local assemblers that are here, where capacity utilization is 5% and below, right? If you look at the trucks that we're talking about, if you look at the agriculture, so if we take a sectoral approach...
Is that however, a reflection of where they can get the financing from? Because a company wants to import 50 buses. So sometimes you can get the financing from China, say, as long as you buy Chinese buses, or from Germany,
it becomes
or whatever. Becomes conditional.
This is where I said now our local finance and institutions need to come to the party, right? And say, look, these guys here want to buy, say, buses. They want to buy trucks. They want to buy agricultural equipment that we manufacture, right? They buy from local companies.
Right.
Then they say to us, okay, how much do you require as foreign currency to import the raw material?
In fact, unfortunately, I have to cut you off there because we've only got a bit of time, but there are 3 topics I'd like to really cover. The first one is the importance of Zisco steel. Now, I don't think people appreciate that 90%, I believe from your own figures, I think, Austin, you were the one who said this in one of your workshops, that 90% of raw materials are imported by your manufacturers. And a lot of that could be taken away if we had a productive Zisco steel. I mean, apart from the fact that 5,000 people lost their jobs and unfortunately Redcliffe is turning into a ghost town as Zisco steel, at least something is happening there to take over the debt and revitalize it. But how critical is Zisco steel to your manufacturing base?
Just on the raw material side of things, if we get our raw materials locally, we'll be very much competitive in terms of exporting. That's our major challenge. If you look at a Zimbabwean company, we do what we supply, say, the DRC market. The DRC customer actually goes to South Africa to buy the product, and then transport it through Zimbabwe to DRC. And then in Zimbabwe, if we get the raw materials, we buy the raw material from South Africa, we manufacture it, already there is an added cost. But what we are saying is, if we start manufacturing here in Zimbabwe, in terms of if we are getting the raw materials here in Zimbabwe, we actually capture the whole market. You know, we are the central part of this region.
Right.
So Zimbabwe, I'm sure that's why I've been saying we always miss each other in one room.
Right.
We know we want to create we want to generate foreign currency. That raw material we are getting from this, we can actually generate a foreign currency in terms
Right.
of the raw material. And
It will cut
products
down
as
the
well.
import bill.
Yes.
Right. Okay, let's take a comment and then I'll quickly have, because unfortunately I'd like to give listeners a chance to express themselves. I think the word retooling has created a mindset that looks outside for salvation. I'm in the horticultural sector and I can't get appropriate tech for small-scale production, but plenty in France. Our engineers have to talk to every sector to establish their needs and meet these. So I assume that this listener has tried to look for the tech locally for small-scale production horticultural sector. He can't find what he needs here and has had to go and look outside the country. So basically he's saying, hey, can we look at each sector? So your association is talking to the Horticulture Association, understanding what they require, seeing what companies that you have that can produce these to that just makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It does.
Yes, I think that's one of our goals as the business committee. We are going to be engaging different sector associations to find out their requirements as well, and also link them with the local manufacturers in our sector that can sort of cater to that as well.
All right, brilliant. Okay, look, I'm sorry to have to cut you off because, again, on Business Unusual, we could talk for a long time, and I haven't even, there's just so many questions I have to ask you, but there is one more I have to ask you, yeah? Why should we not blame you, the manufacturers, or the association that represents them, for some of these price increases that are going on in our community at the moment? Yeah, you're the guys that make the packaging. Some of them, you're the guys. Some of your manufacturers. I know in your industry it may not be so, but some of the what do you believe? This is a supply chain problem, right? Do you believe that you guys or your members have a role to play in keeping prices down, or at least managing prices for the ordinary consumer out there?
Andy,
Good question.
it's a very good question.
By the way, listeners, they all look at each other. If you're on Facebook Live, you'll see that.
You want to look at the value chain.
Yeah, it's a value chain.
You want to look at the procurement process of our raw materials. We've got a lot of probably other people in between. Right now, we've got a severe shortage of foreign currency, and people are getting wherever they're getting it from.
Right.
So somebody will import and load it. By the time it gets to us, it's already overloaded.
All right.
Compounded by the fact of, if you look at our utility costs, they're extremely high.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
So
Patrick, as I said, we're going to keep on going. But anyway, keep that in mind that you may be blamed, so do something about it. Yeah? See if you can keep the cost down, prices are going up. Anyway, I'd like to thank the Engineering Iron and Steel Association of Zimbabwe, represented here by Mr. Austin Tigere, immediate past president. Austin, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Patrick Munyaradzi, EISAZ Business Committee member and also past Vice President. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
And Varaidzo Kudenga, Chairperson, EISAZ Business Committee. Thank you, Varaidzo.
Thank you, Andy.
And of course, we end on our quote. Manufacturing still has the greatest multiplier effect in terms of job creation of any sector of the economy. Something to think about. Good night, and you all be safe.